It's that time of year again. No matter what religion, race, or creed, it's holiday time, and you can't escape it. Kids are lined up at the mall to see Santa Claus, there's no parking anywhere, and every song on the radio is annoying.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh.
The holidays can be stressful for everyone, but have no fear, we've got you covered. This is the Yogi's Guide to getting through the holidays without losing your
Make our spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song.
Hey everyone, I'm Taylor Harkness. Thanks so much for listening. On this week's episode, we're talking about how to keep your cool when everyone and everything around you seems to be spoiling your eggnog, so to speak. So I compiled a list of my tips, and then I turned to a couple of friends and listeners for their advice on how to navigate the holidays in the least stressful way. Check it out. How are the holidays in your house?
Oh my gosh, they're so fun right now because I have a preschooler. She's 4.
This is Andrea Ferretti. She's a longtime yogi, writer, former editor for Yoga Journal, and above all things, she's a mommy to a wee toddler.
I think there was a long time in my life where I wanted to have a kid, and the holidays were starting to get a little dreary for me. And now we just have all this magic, and she's so excited, literally just driving down the street or walking down the street, looking at the lights and talking about meeting Santa. And oh my gosh, we can't forget to put the cookies out. And so it's really, really busy, but it's really full, which is great.
So do you find that there's a different set of, what stresses you right now about the holidays and having a child versus what used to stress you when you didn't have a child?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Well, right now it's just the sheer busyness and kind of getting it all done and getting enough sleep. Because I think probably most parents will relate to me in that you're up really late at night wrapping presents, and we adopted a family this year, so I'm trying to get that done in time. And we had a kitchen leak that led to the ceiling falling in several weeks ago, and that led to this big renovation. So Sophia and I moved 7 times in 7 weeks to different locations. And
this was all between right after Thanksgiving and then just ended recently.
Yes. And we just got back in the house last week. We still don't have a stove. We still don't have a sink in the kitchen. So we're washing dishes in the bathroom. So yeah, it's just the general craziness. But as I said, it's really full. And I've been actually using my yoga practice to say yes to everything this year, and just to remind myself that this is meaningful. This is what I want. So I want to try to enjoy it. And I just want to say yes to all the craziness, and yes to the mess that there is, and yes to the fact that we don't have a Christmas tree yet, and it's not going to be perfect. And yes to the fact that sometimes she's going to be really exhausted and whiny, and she's not going to be this perfect little kid who's, always got magic in her eyes. That's just kind of how it is. So
you mentioned adopting a family. We adopted a family last year, and it was a group of a bunch of our friends. So just got together and we just adopted this family. And that was, I have to tell you, because we actually don't give gifts in my family, which we'll talk about in a second. That's one of my tips for kind of maintaining your sanity throughout the holidays. But because we don't give gifts, the one time that we actually had to go out and shop was just a big group of just fun, fabulous gay men running through the store, shopping for a little girl and then shopping for the mom. And we just spoiled this family and went back and of course had a few drinks and wrapped all these presents for everybody and then shipped them off. Just the essence of being together and sharing food, and maybe it's not family, it's just a group of friends, but doing something good for someone else that you don't even know. You don't know these people, but you get a little, brief glimpse of their life and their story and what their names are and how old the children are. And you get to just spoil this family and do something that they'll never meet you. So it's totally selfless. But at the end of it, you still feel amazing. You feel amazing walking away from, wow, look at what we're so fortunate to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, you mentioned just being able to spoil them. And I noticed, I was shopping for the family yesterday. And I noticed that I wanted to buy them everything they wanted on their list. They say you don't have to get them everything on their list, and you don't have to And I wanted to, because I know that they need it. And I know that they will appreciate it. Whereas when I'm shopping for my own daughter, I'm oh, well, I don't want to get her too many things because I don't want her to be spoiled. And I don't there's more psychology and hesitation, but when you're literally just doing it from a place of service, it feels really different. It feels really good.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Kudos
Yeah.
to you for
Oh,
when all the
thanks.
craziness that you have going on this year, for still being able to find a way to give back.
Yeah, no, it feels really important, I like that you did it with friends. I was actually thinking next year, when I'm a little bit more on top of it, I want to organize it with Sophia's school and try to get different families from the school to adopt families, so we can all have a party and wrap together, and like you said, have a drink, have some cookies, and make it really fun, and then serve more people.
Frosty the snowman was a jolly, happy soul with a corncob pipe and a button nose and 2 eyes made out of coal.
So I'd like to shift gears just for a second, because you and I have talked before about how, while you're happily married now, for a long time you were that person who was single and maybe bringing a random +1 to the holidays with the family. So do you have any advice or any tips for those who might not have a partner right now, or who might be feeling just a little bit lonely this time of year?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was actually just thinking about this the other day because I was thinking about what I wanted for Sophia in the course of her life. And like the very first thing whenever I think about that is I want her to feel loved. I want her to know that she is loved. And so I was thinking, well, how do I really convey that without her feeling like she's constantly looking for love, right? And I realized, what I want to say to her is, if you want to feel love, you have to be love. You have to embody love. And that might sound kind of cheesy or cliche, but I absolutely believe it to be true. And I think the way to do that, if you're just feeling lonely or outside of things, is to be kind and present with like every person that you meet, the person at the coffee shop who you see every day, your neighbor, and then also with yourself. So being loving and being kind to the people around you will I truly believe help you feel more love and more gratitude and more just more supported by the universe, more supported by everyone around
So it
you.
sounds as though you're all for those holiday movies that we've come to know and love, that are all about like spreading holiday cheer, and maybe they have some weight, that being a yogi around the holidays means practicing taking it off the mat and being an example of the love and the compassion that you want to see in the world, Gandhi.
Oh my gosh, totally. Yeah, I do. I really do think so. I mean, I think like thinking about others is the key to so much happiness in life. And I feel like studies have proven that, although I don't have them at my fingertips right now.
Well, I would absolutely 100% agree with you, and I will go ahead and pull those studies for you. Andrea, thank you so much for this. I appreciate it. Have a
Thank
happy
you.
and
Thank
stress-free
you.
holiday.
You too, sweetie. Lots of love.
Thank you. Right back at you.
It's Christmas Eve. It's the one night of the year when we all act a little nicer. We smile a little easier. We share a little more. For a couple of hours out of the whole year, we are the people that we always hoped we would be.
For a lot of us, the most stressful part of the holidays is gift giving. I mean, it certainly was for my family, at least up until about 5 years ago, when we all decided to call it quits. We devised this brilliant plan that just takes a bit of conversation and honesty. So my best tip for getting through the holidays this season was actually inspired by the birth of my nephew, Jack, who is about to turn 6.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer.
Just before his first Christmas, all of us in the family were racing around. We could see ourselves spending time and money on the stuff that didn't really matter, and we have a pretty big family gathered under one roof. So big, in fact, that some of us even camp in the backyard every Christmas because we run out of beds. Martin and I just got a new tent this year, and we can't wait to share it next week with our now 80-pound pit bull. Every year since baby Jack was born, we've had a lazy breakfast on Christmas Day, and we let him open his presents. After Christmas dinner, the adults gather around the fire with their cocktails, and we commence the annual Harkness family White Elephant game.
Oh, so bright. Won't you
So we all get a gift, and none of us had to spend more than $30. Genius. And it has saved us all so much time, money, and frustration without having to worry about, the right size or if someone will like what you got them. And last year, Martin and I walked away with a deep fryer. So, boom. before we move on to the next guest, you should know that Andrea and I spoke for over an hour, as friends tend to do. But I know that you're busy and I'm busy and it's the holidays, so I had to whittle it down for the sake of time. She had a lot to contribute, and I think that this would really help during this time of year, so I've made a short list of things that we spoke about. The thing is, even right now, in the comfort of my own home, and even though I don't have any shopping to do because we don't give gifts in my family, there's still just something about this time of year. It's magical, but it can also stir a lot of emotions. Like, I should be stress-free, but I'm trying to record and there's this fucking rooster crowing in the background. And while I could just record later, there's this pressure to get things done before the big day. And the thing is, I live in the city, so it's like there's no reason that I should be hearing a rooster. It's ridiculous. Anyway, here's what we chatted about, and I hope it helps. Oh my God. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, if you're like me and you don't get to see your family too often, then try reminding yourself that all this craziness and their differences of opinions, all of this stress it's just temporary. So soak it up. Practice being present and listening. Even if you don't agree with your family members, look, I mean, I have a grandma whose entire Facebook feed is nothing but Bible thumping and bashing my side of the political aisle. But I'm still thrilled to see her because it's not often that I get to, and I have to remind myself of that. Andrea added to this, don't take the bait. Relax your shoulders and breathe. If you feel your feathers getting ruffled, like I would like to ruffle that rooster's feathers right now, then if you feel your feathers getting ruffled, then step away. It's not worth it. Shift the focus back to being positive and the fact that you all are together. We also spoke about the holidays and depression. Many folks turn to alcohol or substances during this time of year to help with the slurry of stress and the emotions. In my family, doing shots together or passing a spliff is a way of decompressing and letting our guards down. We all relax a little bit more. But if you know yourself or if you know others in your family can't handle their alcohol and it tends to cause fights or arguments, then pass on spiking the eggnog and instead find the dog in the house, sit down, snuggle for a bit, and chill out. And if you can, cook this rooster for me, please. I would appreciate it. But what about those of us who really struggle with tense family situations? I'll admit my family is not perfect. I love you guys if you're listening, but we have our shit. We have such a wide variety of backgrounds, personalities, and different lifestyles. There have been multiple divorces, yet exes and current partners, previous spouses, kids from both families and previous marriages, a few gays, but mostly breeders, super conservative and loudmouth liberals like yours truly, some hyper-religious, and a few atheists alike still come together under one roof. While we might disagree on virtually everything, we put that aside for this time of year, and we enjoy being together. But putting egos aside, listening to each other, and still maintaining your own sets of values and beliefs can be really challenging. So I sat down with Alexandria Crow, a well-known yogi with an unusual family dynamic, even more strange, you might say, than mine. And we talked about getting through the holidays when your fam be cray-cray. Hey, Alex, thanks so much for talking with me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So here's the thing. A lot of people around the holidays have a lot of issues with family and a lot of issues with like getting together and the stress and the struggle. What are some of the struggles that you have?
I love my family. I love each and every one of them. As
the disclaimer comes out.
The disclaimer always first. Family out there, if you hear this, you know I love you, and you also all have a really amazing sense of humor. So there is always that part. But my family's they're so funny. There's a lot of really big personalities, as you can imagine. If I'm one of them, like there's like big opinionated personalities in my family, and it tends to sometimes get pretty heated. I speak about it sometimes, but I was raised in an evangelical Christian family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I like the whole like speaking in tongues and altar calls and laying of hands, like that whole thing. So it's my dad still has a little bit of a foot in that. And my sister's pretty big into that. And then I've got all these step siblings and my stepmother, and it's a pretty crazy group. And, every now and then when I'm there, there's the whole Christianity conversation because I'm quite opposed to that. And then they have their political views and they're just loud people about their opinions and talking about all of that. And they're all very, very unique. My stepsister is a raw vegan Orthodox Jewish lady who's also married to an Orthodox Jewish rapper. And so there's like just all these very eclectic, interesting people, as am I. I'm no normal person in that sense. I'm not vanilla. I come with all kinds of weirdness, but they're all really different. And so when you bring us all together, it's quite a lot, especially when the religious conversations come up, and that's hard. It's really difficult, and I've spent a lot of time in tears in the past, and crying too much red wine, crying over the whole heaven and Alex conversation. so it's a lot, and it's really traditional in a lot of ways with like the meal, and with that kind of thing. We do different gift giving. We've done white elephant ever since being a mixed family in terms of marriage. So I know. I think you mentioned that you've done that as well, but that's what we do there. But otherwise, it's pretty traditional, except for the people that are there and what we're talking about and everything. So usually when the religion conversation comes up, because inevitably it's Christmas after all, I suppose.
It's going to come up.
It's coming up. You know it. Yep. And they're going to talk about it, and they're going to, it's always been a point of contention. And I know people have that, where your family's beliefs, be it religious or political or something like that, may be in direct opposition with yours. And coming into the holiday season, and being put in situations where you're spending time with those people, not that you don't love them, but that kind of conversation, it's almost like I used to worry about it coming up. And I know that it's like, oh man, I'm like the lone man out. Like that's how I always felt. Like I'm really the lone man out. I don't buy into a lot of this belief system. I'm not part of that. And the conversation would inevitably turn, because they would be asking me about what I was doing in my life and what I was up to. And, especially as I started teaching yoga, that was always the conversation. Like, what are you up to, Alex? What is this yoga thing? And I'd have to start explaining it.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because as I'm sure a lot of people that are listening, I teach yoga, you teach yoga, but yet my family, again, God bless them, I love them, but my family, if you were to ask them, I mean, they probably would tell you, maybe I sell frozen yogurt. Like that's the closest that they could to get to what I actually do for a living. So how do you navigate being the black sheep and keeping your cool in a family that wants to tell you that your life is maybe wrong, or that your path is just not the one that you should be following? All these shoulds,
Yeah, it's funny, because I was actually, my upbringing was always like a little bit of a juxtaposition between two things. One was, you're unique. They encouraged me to be a weirdo. They just like let me be as odd as I wanted to be, and which has had its good and bad points. But they just knew that I was like this individual person. So they kind of encouraged this black sheep part of me, for sure. They encouraged me to be rebellious in certain ways, and to broaden my horizons on how I looked at things and how I dressed myself and how I explored the world. But then in addition, it was also like, follow the rules, do it this way. This is how we do things. And this is what.
So it was almost believe. Like be a black sheep, but within these parameters.
Yeah. But stay within the bounds of the yard.
Yeah.
So, that is difficult when you're the one that sees things alternatively. But I constantly remind myself that there's nothing wrong with their vantage point. It's just another vantage point. And it doesn't matter that they don't like my vantage point, or that they think it's wrong. It's my vantage point. It's the one I choose to take. It's the one I believe. It's from where I see. I can't change it. And so I kind of remind myself that it's just them expressing concern or where they're coming from, and that I don't have to take it personally. One thing that kind of being a yogi and yoga teacher has taught me is you can't take anything personally unless it was like really intentionally aimed at you to harm you. But they're doing it with the best of intentions. And, it stopped having so much fire. And a lot of those conversations stopped having so much fire when I stopped letting them affect me, and when I stopped trying to argue against their beliefs. I would just say, okay, that's okay. My family's really similar to yours. I think they thought I was like a gymnastics coach for a long time, because the poses kind of look similar, even though I called it yoga. They thought I was like a fitness yoga gymnastics coach. But
yeah, I teach tumbling on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, exactly. But I do a lot of like high bar for adults. But it was one thing where one of the pieces of advice I could give people is that I started explaining yoga in a kind of different way, because I just told my dad the other night, he just found out that Buddhism is not a religion in the sense that they're not worshiping the Buddha. I thought they were worshiping the Buddha.
And
And
did he find that out because of you?
yes, because I told
Look
him
at you
that.
broadening someone's horizons.
Yeah. And he was like, okay, well then explain it to me. And I revisited a conversation we'd had many years earlier when he said, yoga's those fancy poses and, and it's like a cult in a sense. And I was like, no, it's actually not. And he didn't really allude to the cult part as much as the fancy poses. But when I started talking about what it was about, he was like, I really like that. That's like what I try to do in traffic in London. Like I have to sit and just endure and just be with what is. And I like that idea. And he's like, I'm trying to experiment with that. So I try to find points within yoga or within my way of seeing the world that are common to the people that I'm in conflict with oftentimes, where I'm like, well, you believe this, I believe this too. This is a commonality point.
This is where we can meet halfway,
Yeah.
on something that we can agree upon.
Yeah, just because you call it a different name doesn't mean that it's necessarily threatening or different.
Yeah, I love that. Explain your beliefs in more of a common ground, compassionate way. A lot of yogis, it seems these days, they want to, especially yoga teachers, want to preach that we need to be accepting and that we need to. But when other people don't necessarily accept them, rather than accepting their beliefs and trying to meet them halfway, then they get offended. And I love the point that you made about. It stopped being fiery when you let it stop affecting you, and that we have to realize if we are going to be, if yogis are going to be the wave makers and the change makers and the doers and the shakers in our community, that's gonna ruffle some feathers. And if it ruffles feathers in your family, you have to then meet their opposition to this with a little bit of like patience and compassion, and maybe do take more time really explaining what you do with your life, and and not just shutting down and not, I can't believe they're so ignorant that they think that I sell frozen yogurt, not that that's a bad, I mean, I wish I could sell frozen yogurt. I would eat the place clean, but but it's not what I do. It's not my job, and so rather than getting offended, just meet them in a place of like, I hear you, and that's not exactly my take on it. That's not how I do things. But if this is a way that we can both learn from it, then let me tell you what I do with my life.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up such a good point when you say that we preach all this non-judgment and acceptance as a community, and I see the same thing where that's all fine and good as long as everybody's doing what you like and what you want and what your belief is or take on it, and that's not what it means at all. It's actually like allowing unconditionally people to be as they are, including self. So for me, when somebody has an alternate view than me, it's not like your view is wrong and how could you be so ignorant? That's your vantage point. I understand that's the lens you're looking at the world through. Okay, well, if that's your lens, let me show you my lens a little bit or explain my lens to you somewhat, and not in a way that I'm trying to convince you to look my way.
Oh, awesome point. I love it. And it let people have their own vantage point. It almost allows you to be like that duck where the water just kind of rolls off your back. So I appreciate it. And hopefully that will help some of our listeners just kind of navigate the holidays with some more difficult family members. Alex, thank you so much for sharing this, for sharing your story and for your tips. I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful, happy holiday no matter what it looks like.
Thank you, Taylor. You too. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So as you can imagine, that conversation went on for a really long time too. I've got to get better about the way that I gab and gab and gab, because otherwise I wind up with hours and hours of tape to edit. So I hope that this helps you. I hope that you can make it through your holidays without losing your shit, and that you can just settle for a second, sit and be with your family, be with your loved ones, and enjoy. And whether you're with family, whether you're with friends, or whether you're by yourself this holiday season, my last tip is to return to gratitude. No matter what's going on in your life, I'm sure there's something that all of us can be grateful for at the end of the day, whether it's the love of your dog or the roof over your head or the food in your belly. So thanks for tuning in. I'll leave you with this.
Hey, this is Michelle calling from Atlanta. A tip for getting through the holidays and keeping your sanity is making sure that you take some time out for some self-care, whether that is going for a run, taking some yoga classes, or going for a nice long walk, spending time with your pets. But just spending about an hour of time each day or as often as you can to just spend some time loving on yourself. Hope everyone makes it through this holiday season unscathed. Bye.
Hey, this is Melanie from Atlanta, and my tip for surviving the holidays is to pick your battles. Happy holidays, everyone.
Hi, my name is Colette, and I'm from Atlanta. And as for getting through the holidays with your family, I have to say, after just having seen my family a few days early, one of the biggest keys that I learned to help me get through the holidays is listening, like really present, compassionate listening. I have a grandmother who is much older and drives me kind of crazy sometimes, but this year what I practiced is just sitting and giving her my full attention and listening and refraining from judgment, and it really worked. I was able to leave with a happy heart, and that was really, really great. So I'm really grateful that I could have that this year. Have a happy holiday.
My name is Kristen DeAndrade from Charleston, South Carolina. And when it comes to handling the holidays, I tend to return to a place of gratitude and just being in the moment, because the moment isn't forever. And especially when it comes to family, you know, they're not around forever either. So come from a place of kindness and love, and cherish the moments that you have now, because you never know what tomorrow will bring.
Hey, this is Walter Mazzanti, and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and the way I deal with all the holiday stress is what I do all year round. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Even if it's just 5 minutes, close my eyes, take a deep breath, and center myself. Works every time. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Christina from Atlanta, and my tip for surviving the holidays is to just take a breath and accept that not everything's going to get done and not everything's going to be perfect, but you just need to take care of yourself first, whether that's catching up on Real Housewives or taking 10 minutes to do a quick meditation, maybe a little bit longer if shit really hits the fan.
What's up? This is Wes from Atlanta. Throughout your holidays, do not stress. Do not stress. Do exactly what you want. My formal attire throughout the holidays will be sweatpants and other pieces of comfortable cotton, and I suggest you do the same. Do it! Peace!